Imagine that you're one of the leading designers of the moment, and from scratch, you ended up creating a brand that generates tens of millions of dollars, and now you find yourself with all these millions in front of you. Well, that's a bit like Rhuigi SCAMMED's story, the founder of the brand Rhude, who apparently succumbed to the allure of money, as he is now accused by his investors of diverting a significant amount of money from his own brand to fund a lavish lifestyle worthy of a rich heir, with expensive Italian sports cars, extended stays in dream villas, or luxury watches worth over 100,000 euros.
Life is good, you know what I mean?
We're talking about tens of millions of euros diverted over several years, and this dark affair is making headlines in all the streetwear and fashion media right now, with quite serious accusations that not necessarily everyone understands, to the point where, for the general public, he's simply seen as a thief. Apparently, this story seems to be affecting his professional career as well, since he left his position as artistic director at the Swiss luxury brand Bali after just 1 year, and many believe that his abrupt leave could be linked to that affair. So, what is Rhuigi accused of? Is he really guilty? Or could it be one of his former associates attempting a vendetta to bring him down?
Hello channel! Welcome to my Hello guys, welcome to our channel!
After the huge scam by Zadi Kicks that managed to swindle over $100 million from resellers, we had to talk once again about a guy who has apparently been involved in shady dealings for years, Rhuigi SCAMMED. Those well-versed in streetwear and fashion know him quite well, but those less familiar probably have never even heard of this guy or his brand Rhude. Yet his brand is worn by all the big-time American stars, ranging from Jay-Z to Chris Brown to Justin Bieber and Future. Well, the list goes on, and it doesn't stop there. He also collaborates with industry giants that you're sure to know, like Zara or Puma. To understand why and how he supposedly diverted funds, we need to briefly delve into his background, because you'll see that shady dealings and loose financial management are nothing new for him, and apparently it runs in his blood. With his Puerto Rican singer appearance and the slight accent in his name, one might think he comes from a Hispanic country, but not at all. Surprisingly, his story begins in Asia, in the Philippines, where he was born in the early 90s. In the early part of his story, everything was going well. His dad was an engineer, they were pretty well off, and he wore fancy Yves Saint Laurent suits. His dad worked all over the world and traveled with the family, but everything changed in 2001 when things started kinda to go downhill in the Philippines. His dad saw the Falcon Punch incoming from a mile away and realized it was better to get out of that mess. Having family in the United States, they sought refuge there, specifically in LA. Unfortunately, even though the city can be dreamy for some, once they arrived, their lifestyle drastically changed. His dad was no longer in a good position, and the family that used to live the good life became a refugee family without any stability or work. Young Rhuigi found himself in a country where he didn't speak the language or understand the culture, but more importantly, he went from a kid who lacked nothing, born into a quote-unquote bourgeoisie, to a child from an almost precarious family. He quickly realized he had to make some dough on his own, and his first trick to make some cash was adding Saint Laurent tags on old raggedy jackets just to resell them for triple the price as quote-unquote luxury vintage products. Well, even if it's possible that we might have had some fun changing up tags ourselves, don't get it twisted. To the guys who actually do this, we really aren't on the same team.
You're a liar, you're a thief, you're a murderer, you're an adulterer. God can't forgive you.
In other words, he was a huge scammer, and even though at that time he was just a little cheating people by changing labels, it was the thing that made him realize the importance of branding. He knew very well that the jackets he sold were kinda shitty, but the people bought them anyway because they were supposed to be vintage Yves Saint Laurent.
Some people are so dumb.
The fraudulent resale of vintage clothing was the first stepping stone in his fashion journey, but it was just a small side business that brought in a few bucks alongside his studies, which he didn't pursue further. He dropped out, probably due to the lack of motivation, and most importantly, a lack of money. Because you see, in this crazy country, that good old US of A, college tuitions aren't free. They can cost you an arm and a leg, with prices equivalent to buying a luxury car every year. It can even reach up to $300,000 to obtain a degree. And let's not forget that student debt amounts to nearly $1.7 trillion.
This is ridiculous, man. Ridiculous.
College wasn't for him, but he realized there was something to be gained in fashion, specifically in luxury streetwear. In his teenage years, he had a collective with his group of friends called Primitive, which was supposed to be a clothing brand to be sold in all the top luxury boutiques. Or at least that was one of their goals. Well, thoughts out for the guy. He would eventually achieve that goal about 10 years later, but absolutely not with the brand Primitive. Later on, he managed to get involved in some serious projects. Well, serious in the sense that they gained considerable attention at the time, such as the brand Tizavision, a a rather fraudulent brand that took New Era snapback hats or even Adidas and resold them at 5 times the price by adding Tizza embroideries. It was mainly successful because Taz Arnold had a prominent position in the industry and managed to place his products with highly sought after celebrities. You can even see him in this photo alongside Kanye and Virgil Abloh. And every time I see this photo, it fucking kills me. Just look at their damn styles. Imagine this squad of goofballs has dominated the streetwear scene for the past 15 years.
I do not want to comment.
Without ever attending fashion or design schools, young Rhuigi continued his learning journey in fashion, learning to sew, create patterns, and even interning with renowned designers in Los Angeles. After gaining all these new skills and experiences, he made the choice to launch his own pieces for real. It was in the early 2010s. At first, he showcased his creations on social media, often accompanied by his sister, who had her own jewelry brand called Rhude. And as you may have guessed, his brand was already called Rhude back then, with the RH in their names being a family reference. For some reason, they all had RH as the first letters, whether it was Rhuigi, his sister Roxy, or even their dad Roderick. His first big hit was this paisley pattern t-shirt that initially went unnoticed because, well, he was selling it for $150. But everything changed after the stylist of Kendrick Lamar stumbled upon this piece and had Kendrick wear the t-shirt at the 2012 BET Awards. And the previously flopping item that hadn't sold at all instantly became a hit, generating $150,000 in pre-orders thanks to Kendrick and all of his fanboys. That's when he realized he had to invest that money to expand his business and absolutely break into the fashion world.
Absolutely f***ing not.
He spent it all to buy a foreign and live the high life for 3 months.
So he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Well, the business was managed quite haphazardly in the beginning. He had to start from scratch and was forced to do pre-orders and only sell t-shirts because he didn't have much money left. But over the years, he made a name for himself. His brand was stocked in major stores and worn by celebrities. In fact, 4 years later, in 2016, he caught the attention of a certain George Robertson, a guy you probably don't know, but he's the genius behind a song everybody knows.
I'm sexy and I know it.
Man, shut your ass up.
George Robertson invested the royalties from the song into Rhude and bought 20% of this new brand for $50,000. It was this guy who used his connections to push the brand into the star system, and for the past 7 years, the brand has skyrocketed, and George Robertson was clearly responsible for its success. We started seeing more and more highly detailed pieces, with a cool blend of luxury and old-school couture, mixed with streetwear and a very young, self-made man living life on his own world with his own rules, artistic direction. The brand's branding became highly recognizable, with the Marlboro-inspired concept becoming an integral design element, seen, for example, on the pockets of his jackets. However, when it comes to sneakers, they're not necessarily groundbreaking. It's mostly about remaking classics, or rather, questionable designs.
What the hell?
But the formula proved to be extremely profitable as the revenue grew year after year, reaching $30 million. Beyond the numbers, the brand positioned itself at the top of luxury streetwear brands, alongside Fear of God, Off-White, and the whole clique of flexing brands. Of course, we had the usual collaborations with brands like Vans or Puma, but also with high-end luxury car brands like Lamborghini or McLaren. However, something changed abruptly in the last 2 years. Rhuigi started distancing himself from the brand Rhude in a strange way. For example, he started collaborating with brands under his own designer name, Rhuigi, rather than Rhude. We saw it with Zara or his latest collab with Puma. And the reason for this detachment from Rhude could be George Robertson's complaints, the same guy who did everything to make Rhude a success in the beginning. According to George, Rhuigi is siphoning off the brand's money to fund his dream life, passing it off as marketing expenses. Typically, brands spend around 5% of their revenue on marketing. The most established brands like Nike or Coca-Cola can exceed 10%. But then, why is Rhude's marketing budget 30%?
Well. Next question.
But that's not all. George also accuses Rhuigi of using Rhude's design team or charging the brand for his solo projects that's bringing him personal profit. And the grossest part of it all is that apparently he's selling Rhude's pieces on the side to VIP clients, making them pay through companies under his name so that the money goes directly into his pocket. In other words, Rhuigi is doing everything possible to intercept as much of Rhude's money as he can, at the expense of George Robertson, who is the second and sole investor in the Rhude Rhude brand, holding 20% of the shares. Yet he claims to have received only $40,000 during all of these years, for a company generating tens of millions of dollars. Well, the dividends here are pretty dry, huh? But here's the thing. A few years ago, Rhuigi offered to buy George's 20% of the shares for $5 million, which is 100 times what he paid for them. Surprisingly, George refused, thinking he deserved more, since according to him, he's responsible for the brand's success, including the design of several best-selling pieces, and when we learn this, we understand everything about this ordeal.
Bullshit.
In reality, what Rhuigi is doing is what most entrepreneurs do. They use the company's funds to finance their lifestyle. He didn't go looking for investor money to squander, but he spent his company's money in a way that might definitely tick off the investor who dropped him $50,000 7 years ago. But he certainly didn't steal that money. And given that the rich lifestyle is part of the brand's marketing, there's even a chance he could justify these expenses as relevant marketing expenses to build some sort of legitimacy, kinda like Philip Plein. What's less defensible is this sort of embezzlement, where he sells the brand's products under the counter, but apparently according to George Robertson, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, not millions.
Oh, it's okay.
The truth is, Rhuigi is feasting and leaving only crumbs for his investor, who would have preferred fewer champagne and rolly expenses and more profit so that he could collect his dividends. This situation is a classic example of the prisoner's dilemma. They would have both benefited from finding a middle ground and reaching an agreement to maximize their profits. But that scoundrel Rhuigi loves living in full HD and has spent all of the money, and the other guy got pissed off enough to file a complaint. This won't only have a big impact on Rhuigi's career, but also on the Rhude brand, and consequently it will inevitably affect its shares, causing them to lose value.
I think it was a very bad move on his part.
In short, if we were to summarize this story with a nice little metaphor, it's just two guys who wanted to milk the same cow to the point of tearing off its tits.
What?